So, welcome to the Cordova Community Science Lecture Series. The lecture series is a partnership project led by the Prince William Sound Science Center. Our partners include the UAF Alaska Sea Grant Extension Office, the Cordova chapter of the Prince William Sound Audubon Society, who hosts one lecture a month, and the United States Forest Service, who generously donates the building and equipment. My name is Meadow. I run the lecture series. If anyone has ideas for lecturers or subjects for the future, please let me know. And I'm going to be passing a sign-in sheet around, so you don't need to put your email address on there unless you want to receive our flyers and don't already. But please do write your name just so we can keep track of how many people have shown up for the event. And now our speaker for tonight is Mandy Lindeberg. She's going to be talking about seaweed, fish, Gulf Watch monitoring, and more, whatever that means. And she also mentioned that she will be giving away some seaweed field guides at the end to the people who answer her quiz questions correctly. So, listen carefully.
I need a letter. So we're stuck on the tape. I'll have to do it by memory.
Yeah, it is super.
Okay, well, I guess I'll introduce myself. I work in Juneau, Bay Laboratories. And I first came to Alaska, spent a couple days in Juneau. I got hired at the onset of the oil spill over the phone. And I lied and said, I know my seaweeds. Well, come to Prince William Sound and help us. So I did. I worked for the university and showed up, jumped on a boat here in Cordova, went out, got to the beach, and I didn't recognize anything. So I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. So I spent many years since then, fell in love with Prince William Sound and Alaska and coastal habitats, and have been researching it ever since, and have really had a fun career all over the state. But I've spent most of, I think, I know the most about Prince William Sound. I've gotten to the Sound almost every summer for the last 25 years. So, gotten around a bit. So I'm just going to kind of give you a big smattering of everything I've done in these 25 years, at least some of it. So seaweeds are kind of my main focus, but staying employed in seaweeds is difficult. And so I have managed to get myself into a fisheries lab and then switch me first, fish, seaweed, habitat. Gotta have habitat for the fish. And so that's always my angle, like habitat, fish, central fish, habitat, figuring out how to utilize this nearshore environment, and it's been very exciting. So I have learned my fishes along the way and done some monitoring and other research projects, so I'll just kind of give you the whole gamut. We can turn down the lights and all. So, why do we care about seaweed fishes monitoring anymore? Well, because I care. So that's good enough reason for me. But there are other reasons. So we have many coastal issues in Alaska and coastal resources that are part of our economy, development projects, oil, mining, all the ports to support even non-marine resources impact the coastal areas. We're dealing with climate change, coastal erosion issues, ocean acidification, impacting potentially important commercial marine resources. But also because we have a history of running aground in Alaska. And you all are familiar with some of these running aground. But this history is significant. We had the 89 spill, but there's also the Salandanga U and the Aleutians from 2004. The drill rig 2003 to cull it. And the Coast Guard, I just went up and got some stats off the website just for this fall. And they had 16 fishing vessels run aground September, October, or July, September. And I know of 3, I think, in Prince William Sound that ran aground, leaked oil. There were some issues there. So the message here is it's not going away. We're going to have vessels running aground. We're going to have oil spills. This can impact the shoreline and have long-term impacts. So this is important. We care about these things. So for the seaweeds, they're very important marine resources. They provide habitat and forage. And I was like putting this up first because these are terrestrial species. They're mammals. And you don't think of them as major users of seaweed, but they are. It's critical for deer in the winter when it's snowy. They go down there and get vital minerals and nutrients that they can't get. And they can't get to the vegetation, those heavy snow winters. Like what year was that? The record snow here?
11, 12.
Yeah. No way, the deer.
1972 or 3.
Yeah. So, and in Juneau the same thing, and there's deer dead everywhere. It was, that spring when everything thawed. They can't get to it, but at low tides in the winter, it really helps them. I always like to point out bears, they actually eat seaweed. Seriously, they do. And all the hunters tell me that in the spring, it's a critical part of their diet when they first come out hibernating. I mean, how else are you going to grease the pipes, get things going, right?
They prefer it with eggs.
Yeah, well, I would too. So, they're right in there. And so you think of other things eating seaweeds, but these guys kind of aren't on the radar as much. And you're all familiar with this. Herring spawns, the arrow cut from Juneau, but we've seen many from Prince William Sound. I've tried to, there's probably 1 or 2 photos in this whole thing that are not Prince William Sound. So maybe that's a quiz question at the end. But I tried to include everything from Prince William Sound that I could in my examples. But they, stay spawn right on the seaweed. This is a close-up shot of that. It's a row on there. It's a critical surface for them to lay their eggs. And boy, it's good eating. So yeah, seaweeds are really important. Lots of commercial products are derived from seaweeds. Some of these are ones you might not be familiar with. This one in particular, I don't think you can get it in America, but it's sold in Asia, obviously. Pringles with Nori seasoning, seaweed seasoning. And also, this is kelp marmalade from Sitka. Has anybody ever had that? It's really good. And lots of extracts are used for makeups and all kinds of things. So there are a lot of commercial products made from seaweeds. So to try and simplify seaweeds, as I go through some of the taxonomy and all of this stuff, I wanted to make an analogy that understanding seaweeds is like learning a foreign language. And your taxonomy are the words that form the language. And the biophysical language, understanding the rules is the grammar. So there's rules for seaweeds, and I'll go through a few of them. But that's your grammar. And then, if you have rules, then they have to be broken. And Alaska breaks them all the time. So that's what I like. I get excited by what's unique in Alaska. Why isn't this the way it's supposed to be? Like they say it is in all the papers. So I love it when it breaks a rule. We get a slang, there's a dialect. Trying to figure that out and understand it is very, very rewarding. So, taxonomy. It's not so bad, really. I'm going to really make it simple. So there's 3 groups of seaweeds, and they're based on color. And it's because the cells in the seaweed have specialized photosynthesizing pigments, and those pigments are colored. So some of them are green, some of them are kind of a brown, and some of them are red. So the good news is there's only 3 colors that you really have to pay attention to. But the bad news is they fade and go away, and the colors lie to you all the time when you get out on the beach. So take it with a grain of salt, but that's how they're organized in these 3 groups or phyla, and it's simply based on the pigments they have to photosynthesize and grow. So now I'm going to just go through like a dozen of, if you want to learn your seaweeds, you better learn these ones. You don't have to learn every single one that's out there, but these are some of the most common ones, and the next time you go to the beach, you might see it and recognize it. So this is one in the group of the green seaweeds. It's called sea lettuce. I think I learned about this when I was in kindergarten. But it is a very good one. You can eat it. It's in lots of different habitats. It's tolerant to fresh water. Almost any beach, you might be able to find it. So that's the primary green one to look for. For the brown seaweeds, I call this rockweed. Some people call it popweed. Anybody else have another name for it? Eucas. Eucas. So this is the most common seaweed on all the beaches in all of Alaska. If you don't know this one, yeah, maybe you should have a different career, because this is a perennial. It's out all the time. I call it the dandelion of the sea, because it's truly a weed. It acts like a weed. It tolerates every single condition you can throw at it. It won't freeze in the winter. It has these ladders so it can float away, rip off the beach, float away, go 20 miles down the coast, land on the beach and drop all its eggs there and refertilize that beach. So no beach can go unfertilized, just like dandelions are everywhere. So this is the most common seaweed you're going to run into. And of the kelps, this is probably the most common kelp you're going to see on a beach. In the lower part of the beach, it's called sugar kelp, Saccharina leucissima. So of the kelps, that's probably your most common one. It's just an understory laying on the beach. Commercial name in the grocery stores, kombu. And that's used for soup stocks and flavoring, hot broths and things like that.
Ribbon here.
Yeah. Another kelp is ribbon kelp, and it has, the difference is it has a midrib. And a lot of times it's called wing kelp because it has these little wings down here at the base. Those are special reproductive blades. But what differentiates it from sugar kelp is its midrib, called Alaria marginata. It's also a commercial species, called wakami, or wakami, however you pronounce the syllables. So that's another one that's commonly found in the intertidal. And then we have the canopy kelps. There's a bunch of canopy kelps that are just offshore of the beach, and they're fast growing, great canopies, trees of the sea, forests of the sea. And this is the giant kelp, Macrocystis pyrifera, and it's a true perennial. It's out year round, and it is in Prince William Sound. It didn't used to be, but it is there now, especially a little bit over, I think, by Hitchinbrook and off of Chalmers. There's a little reef that has some there. But this is incredible habitat for fish and invertebrates and sea otters. And it's the same one that you see off the California coast, the one they harvest there because they water lawnmower that just breaks it up. And it's one of the fastest growing. It's like I can't remember, half a foot a day, 7 foot a day, grows really fast. And it can be up to 100 feet. It's a big plant. The second canopy kelp we have in Alaska is bull kelp. And that one's really easy to tell because it has this big bulb up here. And it helps it, it's full of air, it helps it float to the surface. And it likes high current areas and not so exposed and it will form extensive beds. Inside Montague has a bunch of beds of that. You see that more in Prince William Sound. And it is cyclic. Like beds can be around for 5 or 6 years and then just disappear. And then it starts all over again. And so I get lots of calls every once in a while, like, where did all the kelp go? It's gone! And, a couple of years go by and it starts reestablishing itself. So it just goes through these cycles. The third kelp is canopy in Alaska, and the one you should all know, Kubek Whales. So you see where we go. Dragon kelp. This should be our state kelp. I'm just saying, if anybody has any pull with the legislature, we don't have any state seaweed or state kelp. This is it. This is a cold water adapted species. It grows really fast, up to 100 feet. It's more of an annual type, so it's not there year round. It only occurs in Alaska. It's ours. We should own this as our state kelp. And it has a really cool name, dragon kelp. That's awesome. How can you forget that, right? So anyway.
Have you seen that in the sound?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first place I ever saw it in my career was in front of Bainbridge Glacier.
That's what I take you in the
And
water
Bainbridge
photograph.
Passage.
Okay.
And, yes, and I was throwing hissy fits and making you take me there. So that is, but it only occurs, it occurs in southeast as you go west, and it's the only canopy kelp in the Aleutian. Macrocystis, the giant kelp, and bull kelp don't occur out there. So it's 100% Alaskan and Aleutian. So the red seaweed. This one, Porphyras, it's a group of seaweeds that they look like cellophane. And they're really thin and slippery, and Nori is the commercial name, so if you had sushi, you've eaten it. It's a huge subsistence seaweed. This is what everyone loves to collect. Just dry up into little balls and season. Highest nutrition of any seaweed on the beach. If you're in a survival situation, this is your hero. This is going to keep you from getting scurvy, so when someone does rescue you, you don't embarrass yourself because you're scurvy fever-ridden. It has vitamin C's, A's, and if you're in survival with someone else, they can put up with you a little better because you aren't just scurvy for fever crazy. So I can't emphasize enough that people come up and they go, I was in a survival situation and I ate fucus. And I'm like, why'd you do that? Ew! It's awful. This is the good stuff. This is what you want. And there's like 25 different species in Alaska. So you should be able to find it almost on any beach also. It's much better in the spring. It's kind of a spring bloomer.
Do you know if the eating qualities are pretty similar across the species?
I don't think people in Alaska, well, psychologists in Alaska, me, have looked at that. They have looked at it in other places, but there just hasn't been a lot of interest in that. But we're just trying to deal with the genetics right now to actually nail down the species and what they are first. So Palmarians, commonly called dulse in the commercial world. This is, I like to call this it's a red blade, and I call it kind of fruit leather. And there's 3 different species in Alaska. This is very nutritious, very good in soups, very good just to munch on. You may have to, steal some food from a snail because they love it too. But it's really good for you. And then I just wanted to mention coral and algae. It's kind of an oxymoron. It's algae, it's not coral, but it looks like coral. It's actually a crust. It actually it's a seaweed that secretes a calcium carbonate shell. It's like a clam or an oyster. You have all this branching, and it puts an armor on itself with all that calcium carbonate shell. And so here, this is an alternate phase of those, which is just a crustose form. And it's just totally armored and protected, but it's a brilliant red, pink color. And you'll see it in tide pools, covering rocks. But the other life stage of it, it does kind of look like a coral, okay, I admit. But it's a seaweed. I'm just saying, it's got extra armor. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeous seaweed. You'll see that in the tide pools also. It likes kind of high energy areas.
This is the same as that last one on the rock?
It's an alternate life stage of it.
This is a reproductive stage? Or?
Yeah, it's a reproductive. I have another slide just to touch on that. But seaweed reproduction is complicated. I'm not going to go there. They were considered two different species for a long time until they figured out it was part of the same life cycle. So,
I know a lot of times, like, some stress will cause it to species to shift phases like that.
oh, yeah,
It-
no,
not
this
okay.
is, it's normal cycle. Yep. So now, because I can't expect you to learn all your seaweeds, the hundreds and hundreds that are in Alaska, there's actually hundreds. There are ways to enjoy seaweeds without having to feel the stress of, I gotta know everything and what they all are. So I'm just gonna give you a few hints on just a way to observe seaweeds and understand what's going on, what they're doing. There are some rules to understand. The physical rules, things that influence seaweeds, they all have evolved for the beach habitat. They all specialize in different parts of the beach. So tidal ranges, temperature, salinity, all these things are going to stress out the seaweeds. And the physical environment is going to dictate where they're going to end up, where you commonly find them. Some become specialists in the lower intertidal, some are specialists in the upper intertidal. So your tidal range will really dictate, what availability, what you're going to see. Fucus, of course, is in the middle range, has a wide range, and pretty tolerant, but some are not. It's the tidal range, if you're familiar, stuff in the lower part of the beach is not going to be exposed very long. So if it's out for a long time, it's going to get really stressed and not do very well and die off, and something else is going to take its place. Other ones up here, it's out of the water a long time, it's going to get really stressed, has to be tough, has to be able to lose all its moisture and then rehydrate when high tide comes in. So they've specialized, and certain species are associated or stratified in these zones, in these tidal zones. So those are the rules. The biological rules, and this is just kind of mentioning the reproductive strategies. So some have very simple reproductive strategies, just one or two cycles. Some are very complex. The red seaweeds have 3 different life history stages. The Nori, the one that was the really good Nori, took years before they figured out its life cycle to commercially grow it and outplant it as mariculture in Asia. And it was because it has an encrusting or a subcutaneous form that burrows down into these spores, burrow down into shells. It's a critical stage. You can't commercially grow them, so you know that. And it was just this little obscure spore in the clam shells and oyster shells before they figured out, oh, this is an alternate stage. It's critical to do the whole thing. So it can get really complicated. But some are going to specialize with very complex strategies, so they're more successful. Some are strategizing with seasonality. They're ephemeral. They're only there for a brief time, and they bloom, and they reproduce, and they're out of there. Others are perennials. They're there year-round. And they're designed also for competition for space. They actually have chemical warfare with each other and secrete nasties so their neighbors won't be there. And they have defenses for grazers, evil grazers. I have those guys. They just mow down seaweed like nothing. Gotta watch out for those guys. Urchins are the worst. So anyway, you get this banding because of these biological rules. So when you're looking at the beach, you can see these patterns.
So that picture on the left, that picture has not been doctored? That's
No.
That's the actual color.
Yeah, it's doctored here, but
Right.
this is the
The
banding
left-hand
here.
side is,
Yeah.
wow, that's really
This is a Prince William Sound picture, I might add. Anybody knows where that is?
Up by Axel Inn.
Where?
Up by Axel Inn,
Excellent. I'm not even sure, where's that?
by Big Lick.
Oh.
No?
It's, huh?
Crafted on
Sure.
Simpson.
It's in Western Sound, I'll say. It's in Elrington Passage. There's a islands in the middle.
Can you talk a little bit about the black,
Gonna go backwards.
like,
This black lichen is really important. First of all, it's not oil. It's a marine lichen. So this is, makes a, you see it everywhere in the Sound, you see it everywhere in Alaska. And it actually, I'll go back. It actually shows you, here it's a little weaker, but this is a barnacle zone. She's holding 1.5 meter stick here, intertidal model. And this line here shows mean high waters, just above there. And there's a little darkening here of some marine lichen, but the bottom edge of that is mean high water. And this is another survival trick, because if you're at low tide, you want to know where to put your gear. Get stuff that's going to stay dry, not float away. Get it above the lower edge of the black line. You'll be good. This is called a spray zone. It really likes to embed into rock surfaces and really likes the salt. And I watched Exxon cleanup crews hot water, high pressure hose 3 days in a row for one patch of this marine lichen. And he burned the alders behind him from the steam. And the patch was still there. I finally went over and was like, you know, that lichen's growing into the rock, you'll never wash. He's like, what? So they went away, so that was good. So anyway, it's really a handy thing. It's like someone drew a pencil on the beach, and you can see it from far away. You can gauge where the tide is just based on that one band. So whenever I get to a beach, whenever I'm looking at the coastline, it's the first thing I look for. And another trick, well, you guys are getting the full version here. This is, depending on the width of this, will tell you the exposure at that site. So a really wide band is telling you there's a huge spray zone. What does a big spray zone mean?
Salt.
Big waves,
Big waves.
big exposure. Not a good place to be. If this is a narrow band, it's kind of a protected, nice, calm spot. So it tells you about exposure, it tells you about tide flow. Very, very good indicator. So, because of this aspect of seaweeds, Shorezone has taken advantage of this. It's a mapping, a standardized mapping product for the coastline, and it's been able to take these rules, biological and physical, and actually map them and get them into a database so we can quantify what kinds of habitats we have. So I'm giving you a big spiel on Shorezone, but really, you don't have to know all the species, but you can. They tell you a lot. The biological indicators tell you a lot. So just quickly, there's the first phase of Shorezone is you actually have to go out and get imagery of the coastline. They fly in helicopter. After years of me putting my head in the rocks, they're like, get in the helicopter and go 80 miles an hour at 300 feet and identify everything. It's a little different. So anyway, we fly along the coastline, we image it with still images and video, and it's all georeferenced. And then we take the imagery back, and it gets mapped. They create a digital shoreline, and they break it up into these units. You can see this is a shoreline here that's been broken up from that imagery. It's all a big GIS project. And then once you have those units, you can start applying those physical rules. You can start labeling the cliff, the slope, the width. But the big thing about Shorezone is that biological indicator. It has a whole classification system associated with seaweeds and invertebrates that are big indicator species assemblages in these cross-shore components. So they're called biobands, and that's how it classifies them. So here is a great photo of biobands. This is my favorite. Anybody recognize it?
Rolls hole.
No. It's on the other side of Hitchenbrook.
Double Bay.
This is
This is
this is over by Stockton and the lagoons on Montague. But it's like a barcode. You look at all these patterns. So the mappers see this and they just love it. They're like, wow, I can map this. So identify, they've got codes. Here's that marine lichen line. There's a sedge band here. Fucus, the red seaweeds, top brown kelps, and then even a little patch of eelgrass. You can see those and map those. They're consistent. And each one of these bands becomes predictable on a region level.
What's VER?
Oh, you have a question?
You can barely make it out, but there's a blue band between sed and ver.
Here?
Yeah.
That's actually a dotted line, I think. And that's, so the marine lichen is from here to here, so this is mean high water. And the top of that little spray zone, then there's a sedge zone. And then this black line is the tree line.
What does VER stand for?
That's Varicaria, which is the genus for that black lichen, the marine lichen. But you don't need to remember Varicaria.
But that beach is a pretty shallow gradient beach.
It is, and it's a cobbled beach.
So the cobble is where the Varicaria is.
Yeah, well, it's all cobble, but I think this is an emergent bedrock
Yeah.
that's, eroded. So we can map those. Here's another example. Another Prince William Sound photo. This one is over, where is this one? This one is over by Deer Passage, over there on Night Island, before you get to the Pleiades. So it has great banding. Also, and I've split the screen now, so here's that same photo. Here's a line, I split it. From the air, you can see that banding. But if you're approaching it from a skiff, you start losing that pattern, but you start seeing more detail about what's in the band. So let's start at the top of that beach. So we're on this is the Varicaria. This is what it looks like up close. It's embedded, and we'll embed right in this surface and then flake off. These are fruiting bodies. So, two different dramatic scales. The band right below it here is Fucus. So we started with one species in that first band. Now we have multiple. There's some little snails in there, a few barnacles, 2 or 3 species. Going down the beach, it's getting less stressful. We're getting into this greenish yellow red band. And this is where I can tell you that color is not, especially in Prince William Sound, is not helpful. I think there's a nutrient deficiency for the seaweeds and the reds especially, and they all tend to bleach and get yellowish green. But I don't know, let's see, 1, 2, 3, let's see, probably about a dozen species in here, so we really are jumping up in the number of species just in this one band. We get down to the water's edge. This is that understory kelp, the sugar kelp. Anybody remember the commercial name? Sugar kelp. Tofu. Yep. But you can see now the biomass. So you have diversity and biomass. You're creating habitat. There's all this space. It's happy. It's not stressed out. It's creating a lot of habitat for invertebrates and little forage fish along the shoreline. So the big message here also is that these biobands are really good indicators of physical parameters. So this is one of my favorite shots. I call it Yin and Yang Island because it shows how responsive the biology is just on a small scale. This is an island in dangerous passage, and you might be lost your orientation in this aerial photo, but I can tell you right now that this is the inshore side, and this is the offshore side. We have perennials and rocky shore here. This gets, these are a little piece of ice, but this gets hammered. It gets erosional sediment comes along here and deposits in here. We get finer sediments. We get protection. The waves don't get in here, and all of a sudden we have eelgrass beds and things that only are associated with very calm conditions. And so just in a very small distance, the physical environment changed so dramatically, the whole species assemblage changed. So this is a great tool to have for mapping. Here's another example with Ooze Passage. So this pattern here is being caused by this huge wide band of pebble and gravel that's mobile. The current there comes flying around here, really moves this stuff around. Nothing can hold on. So all the banding's been shifted down to the bottom. Nothing can sustain itself here. That's telling you a lot. I can tell you right now, there's some exposure and high current, mobility of substrate. So all that mapping effort, we've had tons of data, and so it is online. So I'm just going to go through really quickly and show you where it is. You can Google Shorezone. Many things will come up. There's a shorezone.org. There are NOAA Fisheries. This is the one that actually serves up the data portal. But there's a lot of supporting material at the .org. Also, the whole Shorezone layer. I mean, one of the reasons we did it was if there's another Exxon Valdez, we don't want to get caught and not know what resources we have, where the sensitive habitats are. And so it's actually a layer now embedded in the national database, IRMA, which is the response database that all the responders use on the onset of the spill. So that's a really good thing to have now. Lessons learned, and also we're prepared. We're way more prepared than we were. So if you go to shorezone.org or to the NOAA Fisheries site, you'll get a page like this, which is gets you into the database. And this is an online web-enabled GIS database. It's all spatial data. You can just hit the start button, or you can actually choose how you get into the database. We have several databases in this platform. You can choose your configuration. If you really just want to look at the imagery, or if you want to look at the habitat information, that you can change the configuration. You just click start, and this is what the desktop looks like. And I just have a few examples here, but you have your shoreline. We have multiple base maps, satellite image maps you can do. It shows you where the cameras are. This is the video. We've just recently updated, so it's all streaming video on Vimeo now. It's not even, captures of Vimeo frames. It's all full streaming. We did a big conversion of that. And then high resolution stills. And so as you're using your dials here to go through the imagery, little icons will move along. And you can query and make your own habitat map if you want to do things like oil residency index, or I just want to know where the canopy kelps are. You can actually plot those on here and at large scale. So there's, just imagery, and you can download any of these images right onto your desktop by just hitting, there's a little disk icon that you can just download, and right click and say I want to keep this image, but it's all free and available.
What's the community at the bottom there?
This one, I'm in Barrow. Sorry, I did go out of Prince William Sound. This was an example I used for up in Barrow. And this is a different background of the satellite image. But I've moved over now to the tab, to this fish atlas, which is all the beach seine. The database we have hundreds and hundreds of beach and all the catch data and all the species we caught. This is kind of an example of Arctic cod, I think. And I think it was, saffron cod. We have in Prince William Sound. A lot of them. I don't think people realize there's quite a few. They're cold water cod. So anyway, there's probably way more information than you ever want there, but it has a nice photo library of fishes, and you can see some of the same sites along. So you can have that information, aerial images along with those point sources. And we also have a shore station database that, where we ground truth the shore zone. We actually go in and we look at all the species, we measure the slope and the biobands and all the species assemblages associated with that beach. This one's,
Now, is that Barrow again?
it is Barrow, so you can see it's just lush
And have you-
biology there.
Have you done the whole shoreline for Alaska? Or?
We're about over 70%. So the Aleutians, some of Norton Sound, this summer we're going to do Norton Sound and some of Alaska Peninsula. Just a few gaps and then we're headed to the Aleutians somehow, some way.
I've gone out and looked at it. It's amazing. I mean, you've flown every little island and every shoreline in southeast Prince William
Yeah.
Sound, and you just set it and completely fly the coastline at low tide.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And then British Columbia and part of Washington.
We're
part of
adding
Oregon.
British Columbia,
I think
Washington.
Washington's already
I'll
done
just to put it in perspective,
Yeah.
Shorezone in 2011 did Oregon's coast. Took 4 days. We're so, you know, we're on our 15th year.
Oh,
We're just like, wow, this is awesome. The whole state of Oregon, and I'm like, yeah, right. Took us 6 years just to do southeast. So anyway, there's a wealth of information up here, but their integrated databases is great to jump around, and the imagery is wonderful to discover. I would say the Shore Station database, if you go, you'll see you can pull up species lists, and some of them are hyperlinked. Look at that, to seaweedsofalaska.com. If you want to know more about seaweeds, because you don't know enough. And this is the bull kelp. It'll take you right to that page and give you more information right away about the bull kelp. And, you know, if you're hardcore serious, even that page will, will take you to algae base, which is an international, ginormous database that has way more information on taxonomy than you would ever want to know, but it's there.
Misspelled.
Huh?
It looks like it's misspelled.
Algae base? Oh yeah, it is. Look at that. You get a free good guide if you want.
Thank you. It's got an extra A in there.
Yeah.
Maybe
It does.
it's on the G.
It's good there.
So who puts this out, the LGB?
This is an international partner effort, and so if you discover a new species, you get it highlighted here, you can name next to it.
Have you ever done that?
I have.
Can you say that phylum name 3 times fast, Mandy?
Oreophycus aleutocus. Oreophycus aleutocus. Oreophycus aleutocus. It's a kelp in the Aleutians. It actually is one of the founding, genetically, it's really significant. It's a very old one that was one of the source family. It's a new species, a new genus, and a new family. It's just ridiculous. So my career's over. I mean, you can't do any better than that, right? I'm done. So, anyway, so that's probably more than you want to know about seaweeds. So, in all that work, I decided I was going to do some field guides because I was tired of people misidentifying things and complaining. I thought, oh, I guess I need to, do something about that so people will stop. So, I did this field guide in 2010. It's sold out in the first year, and I'm sure there was people in the closet who came out because normally I can't even get a publisher to even do anything with seaweeds. So Sea Grant was gracious to help us out, and it was very successful. We're just going to do a reprint here. Maybe it'll come out in time for Christmas. But in 5 years, the names changed, 25 of them. Don't get mad at me, 25 changed. It is my fault, because it's the geneticists. I gave them all this material from all over, so now they're starting to go, oh, wait a minute. So it used to all be based on, form and morphology and what it looked like and where you found it, habitat, and now the geneticists are like, it's totally different, and you can't even tell by its form what it is. So we're gonna hate doing taxonomy for seaweeds here pretty quick. The porphyras, the Nori that I was talking about, 23 species, well, they got broken up into 6 new genera. So it's a mess. It's a total mess. And partially my fault. But, okay, so I also did, I mentioned earlier that to justify looking at seaweeds, I have to pretend like I'm a fish person. And essential fish habitat for my agency is really important. It's mandated by the Magnuson-Stevenson Act, and we're required to fully understand all life history stages of fish. This was in Prince William Sound, believe it or not. We were doing seasonal surveys, looking at what fish utilize in nearshore at different times of the year. We did die yields, some in the day, some in the middle of the night. Beach staying in the middle of the night is awesome. I'm just saying, things are scary and you run into everything and it's, pretty crazy. But really informative, really cool things to discover here. And so we have federally managed species that we're particularly important and interested in, or that are ecologically important. And so we need to ID these correctly, especially all in life stages. I'll tell you what, it's hard to identify some of the pods when they're really young. And so we, after many years of beach staying and taking photos and trying to figure out what was what, we've got a field guide out. There's over 113 species in there. It represents 23 different families of fish. Talks about their distribution. Lots of photos and, again, some key tips. It is free. I have a couple copies here that are water resistant. The PDF is available online also for free. And it's set up so you can print, pages nicely. This is kind of what it looks like. But we went to a lot of effort to try and get all the different life stage, adults, females, young of the year, larval if we could, because sometimes they are just so dramatically different, especially young of the year. They're tough. So hopefully this will be helpful in people's coolers when they go out in the fields and are looking around and squeezing fish. You might want to figure out what it is before you squeeze it.
What's the one on the lower right is right hand?
This is a pipefish.
Yes.
Yeah. And they're in eelgrass beds a lot of the time. Sometimes cup beds, but they're designed to kind of look like blades of eelgrass so they can blend right in.
Have you seen those anywhere near Cordova? I mean, we have lots of eelgrass beds.
This is a little guy. It says Prince William Sound. Look at all that. Really common. Yep. I don't think we sampled right near Cordova, but
Yeah, I haven't noticed it, but I haven't, heard research.
I wouldn't be surprised. There's impressive eelgrass beds around here, so
There's tons of them.
yeah. Yeah.
You should see, Mandy, they're even coming into the harbor.
Yeah.
The eelgrass beds.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Wow. Must be less disturbance.
Yeah. More salinity.
Sensitive habitat.
Yep.
Okay, so also just another kind of fun publication I want to mention that we did is part of the Shorezone project is we were like, I don't know, it was at 10 terabytes of imagery, and I was like, I think we have some good photos in here somewhere. Why don't we try blowing them up and maybe displaying them? And so we blew them up in big size. We had them at the State Museum in Juneau, and it was a kind of a traveling show, and it was a huge success. And we made these interpretive booklets here to go with them. I have a couple you can browse through, but I can't let you have them. I recommend looking at them because there's some gorgeous photos. I was actually going to talk to Nancy Bird to see if maybe you're bringing a new building in the Historical Society. It would be a great venue to have to display a lot of the images. There's one from Prince William Sound in there. It would be great. It talks about the geology and the biology. What we see in the photos for data and what you might see as art is kind of a great, I really feel like, gosh, what kind of project you can have that's science nerdy and creative artsy too at the same time. So it's been one of the coolest projects, and these booklets were really fun to do. They just flew off the shelves. We could not keep them. So we're going to do some reprints too and try and do some more shows. Okay, long-term monitoring. The big picture. I can't stop saying why. Why is this happening? I think I just got stuck in my terrible tubes. Never got out of them. I was constantly asking, why is this here? Why is this happening? So the monitoring program is a new program, well, sort of new, the last 5 years. We're in our 5th year now. Gulf Watch Alaska, you might have heard of it before. And it's long-term monitoring funded by the Exxon Valdez Oilspill Trustee Council. And they fund it in 5-year increments. Plan is for 20 years, hopefully beyond that. Hopefully I'm not still working there, but hopefully it will continue. Katrina with the Science Center is a big part of the leadership team on this program. And we have 3 major components: environmental drivers, and we have the nearshore component and the pelagic component. And I'm just going to talk about the pelagic component because it's really focused on the sound. I am the component lead for that group. And so there's just too much to cover with all the other stuff. So the pelagic component looks at whales, forage fish, and marine birds. Killer whales is a project for that monitoring that's gone on with Craig Mackin, Humpback Whales, John Moran, and Jan Straley. John's with us at NAMSTA in Juneau. Jan Straley's with the university. Forage fish, USGS folks, John Pyatt and Yui Aritsu, the marine bird folks, Kathy Kulik, Fish and Wildlife, and Rob Taylor, and then Marianne Bishop here with the Science Center. So we're the pelagic group, and we're looking at trophic linkages, trying to understand how these linkages will react to changes in the ecosystem. If there's a change in environmental drivers, how is that going to affect these other species, the predators and the prey? If there's a change in predators, how is that going to affect the prey? And how serious of a change is it? Is it just a temporary change? Is it something that can recover? Or is it terminal? These are kind of the things we're looking at. And our big question for the first 5 years has been, so what are the population trends for some of these key pelagic species in these trophic groups? And how can we count forage fish? Forage fish in the sound are a problem. They're really patchy. It takes a huge effort to chase them all over the sound. And we don't really have a good way to monitor them. So this one's a little different objective for the first 5 years to kind of look at ways of doing that. So Craig Mackin, I'm just putting up one slide for each one of these groups just to kind of give you an overview. This is our legacy data set. He is, 30 years ago he started looking at killer whales, and he is way ahead of all of us. He has got a wonderful data set. He captured the impact of the Exxon Valdez oil spill event on those populations. He's been looking at their distribution, hotspots where they really feed a lot, looking at their seasonal diet needs, and also their feeding behavior. This is a tagged orca. And it shows it's in the sound, then went outside, went over the Copper River Delta, probably snagging a bunch of salmon over there. And also, you can see the dive profile, when they're resting and then when they dive to feed. And they're diving over 150 meters, which Craig was a little surprised. He didn't realize they went that deep. I'm going after those big kings. So anyway, this is a real golden data set, long-term data set that we're going to continue and hopefully get another 30 years. Really, these are long-lived species. It's going to take a long time to fully understand how they're responding to change. Humpback whales. Humpback whales were kind of ignored for a long time, especially during the oil spill. But their numbers have been increasing. And they've been preying a lot on herring, so our monitoring project is looking at what are our estimates of how many whales come into the sound to feed, monitor their seasonal and trends of where they're going to eat, what their behavior is, determine their diets, estimate how many herring they're preying on, and I just want to point out that if you didn't know, one whale in one lunge feed on herring is going to gulp 15,000 gallons of water. That's a lot. And it's going to eat about 1,100 herring per day. I'm feeling a little bloated just reading that. I mean, that's a lot of herring. So they're really trying to get a grasp on really how much predation is going on with the herring and other forage fish, and where are they feeding. This is kind of a distribution from 2007 to 14. And you can see there's hot spots. There's areas where they like to hang out. Also, the forage fish, that, as I mentioned, they're a big challenge in many species. So this particular project is just looking at developing methods for monitoring all of them. And just want to point out that this capelin here, they're looking to be like a forage fish canary in the sea. This is a Pyatt, John Pyatt. And really, because they're a cold water adapted species, they do really well when it's cold and not so well when it's warm, and they respond very quickly. And so here you can see in the Sound 2013, the water was pretty cold. They did really well. But 14 and 15, we had these warm summers, warm, persistent blob out in the Gulf. This winter, last winter, that really is impacting the capelin negatively.
Do you know where their trawls were made?
All over the Sound, the grid. So they do a grid, an acoustic grid, and trawling together. So
They're generally deeper water.
yeah, not nearshore, nearshore, but we're working on that. But it's a problem because they're nearshore. You can't get all that big fancy equipment in so close, so we can use different sampling techniques. But we are using, and this is complementary to diets in certain birds, seabirds. And we can tell from long-term data sets, especially the one out in Middleton Island, that if birds are feeding on capelin, it's a good indicator that there's a cold water condition going on. And they'll change their diets right away. When the conditions change, capelin disappear, start eating pollock and other groundfish type fish. So it's very different diet, different vitamins and
So
calories.
have you made a connection with lack of capelin and the die-off of merge, for instance?
Yeah, well, that's what we suspect. But we're out there right now, it's happening kind of real time. So I get to that in a minute. And then so we have them, yeah.
I thought it was that the MERS were eating the PSP, the capelin were eating the PSP, and then it was going in.
There's a theory about that, but they have
Oh.
not been able to prove it or track it through. And the MERS are all emaciated, so lack of food is really all they can say. They've tested them for toxins, PSP, cannot find it in the fish, can't find it in the birds.
I
So,
thought I read in Anchorage.
well, that's there's sand lance too, and they're looking
Yeah.
for it in sand lance. The sand lance are a little different. They dive down into the sediment. It's a little different diet, so they're studying that one to see if that's the case. And they are seeing it in sand lance, but they still haven't been able to prove the link with data that a lot of these mortalities that we're seeing are specifically because of that toxin. But we are seeing the environmental drivers, the water and oceanographic conditions change. And with that change, we're seeing species change. And because there aren't capelin, they're changing their diet. Well, maybe that other diet isn't there or hasn't happened yet, and they're pretty much not making it through the winter because they needed those extra calories that they didn't get because their primary prey was gone. So it's a working theory. It hasn't been totally accepted because they haven't been able to prove it with other species and other birds and all the other strandings that are the main ones, and even the whales that happen off Kodiak, the fin whales in the spring. No toxins there. I can't figure out why. 67? I can't remember how many.
Well, I thought it was up to 30.
30?
Whales, well, all
Well,
Alaska shoreline
The whole,
this summer.
yeah, the Pacific.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's kind of a mystery, but, you know, it could be that scientists were using the wrong tool to detect the toxin, or we're using the wrong analysis to make that linkage, so we're working on it.
Well, on the Copper River this spring, there was thousands of birds and king salmon from everywhere on
Yeah.
the west coast. So in my mind, that means the feed was there and the whales were there.
Yeah, but,
And talking to Scott Hatch, he said it was a switch.
yeah, the switch,
Because the birds were going over there
yeah.
instead of going into Princeton Sound.
Correct, but there's, yeah, because the food's not there, so they're going somewhere else. Because there's this huge warm blob that's happening, which is in the whole North Pacific, unusually warm conditions. And the primary production of plankton and zooplankton and things that these fish feed on are not there, or they're getting a different species that's blooming at a different time. It's not giving them the normal calories, kind of junk food calorie theory. They're adapted for cold water and specific species to feed on, and when you have a bloom, something totally different, you might not be able to feed on that, and you die out pretty quick. And then that creates this, you know, cascading effect through the trophic structure. So it's tough to detect all those things, but the one common denominator in all of this is the warming trend, and seeing different primary productivity, different blooms, and species behaving differently because they're mobile predators, they're going somewhere else to get food. They aren't getting their normal thing. So I actually did put a slide together on that here after this. The key findings so far just in the first year, obviously with the killer whale long-term data set, long-lived orcas from the East Coast, we still do not know if the AQ1 pod will recover. It looks like it's lost its maternal line, the reproductive females that need to continue the pod, so there could be a potential extinction of that one group. But time will only tell. Humpback whales, turns out they are having a predation effect on herring. Looks like they're taking as many as what was harvested in the last fishery in 1998, equivalent to that. So, fishermen aren't getting the fish, humpbacks are getting the fish. Still working on the final methodologies for the forage fish and looking into integrated surveys for that. And also for the marine fish, or the marine birds, it's actually a thesis for a student who went back and looked at this 25-year data set that we have since 1989 and did an analysis. And since the spill, changes in the pelagic food web have definitely contributed to delaying the recovery of some species. So that didn't help. It was kind of a one-two punch. You had the spill, and you had these big environmental changes happening in water temperature and food chain effects with warming and cold conditions. And it just, through the one-two punch, they really got knocked down and are taking longer to recover than normal. And also from Marianne Bishop's studies, she's looking at seabirds in the winter and estimates about 10% of the herring biomass is being removed by winter birds, affecting the herring population during that season. So we're getting there. We're learning a lot of new stuff. This was a slide I put together with kind of the anomalous things we've just seen in these warm couple summers. The one that was surprising, and even Craig was surprised, killer whales, they're doing really good. There's tons of salmon. They're gorged literally gorged orcas. They're so full and eating so much that they're having to just like lollygag at the surface and rest and sleep in the middle of the day and socialize and do all this other stuff. It's not all about feeding. And he says that literally their fat reserves are huge. They're the biggest orcas he's seen ever. So it's been a positive thing for killer whales and salmon. Humpback whales, recently their hotspots in the past have been Fort Gravina and Sawmill, where they've been feeding. In 2014, kind of switched to Latute and Knowles Head. And this last spring, the herring were just dispersed everywhere, so with individual whales just kind of lunge feeding at little tiny groups of herring, so it was not good feeding conditions for the humpbacks. And as we just discussed, the marine birds, unusual mortalities. We've got a lot of failures at the rookeries, sick, weak birds, mostly murres, and they've been emaciated, and as I said, they've tested them all, they can't identify a disease or a toxin that's in their blood work. So it's an ongoing issue. Hopefully we can understand it, but murres commonly are the first ones to really, when there's a problem or a change in the trophic structure, they start dying off pretty quick.
It's interesting, all summer and fall, I saw so many murres in the sound, but no dead ones.
No dead
They
ones.
were all really good, and then only in the last couple of weeks, I've heard from some people on the ferry coming into Passage Canal and lazy otter charters out of Whittier, they're seeing dead ones all over Western Pennsylvania Sound right now.
They normally are not, they usually are an offshore pelagic feeder, and they were seen near shore when they're not supposed to be in the near shore. And for a long time, we just, in Juneau, the same thing. Literally in Auk Bay Harbor, there's like these young of the year herring, and every sea lion and thousands of murres are in there gorging on them, and the murres are lethargic and they're gonna die. There's just too little, too late. They just didn't feed enough this summer to make it through the winter.
There's one down at the float point dock in the
Is
harbor,
there?
pretty regular right now, kind of lethargic. You want to see one in real life wander down there.
Yeah, I know, we're gonna get some. We're gonna analyze, we're gonna look at their fat analysis and look, if it truly is emaciated and what were they feeding on. Try and get at that, because as a government employee, I can't really shoot birds. It's frowned upon. Somebody else can. So those are kind of some of the cool things the monitoring program has been picking up from the pelagic component just recently. So you can see we have this challenge. We have these linkages and trophic interactions, and we have this for the last century we have all these point source events: the earthquake, the end of industrial whaling, Exxon Valdez, 2014 warmest on record, and then we have these long-term patterns. Climate change is just getting warmer and warmer and warmer. We have El Niños that get warm, unusually warm, cyclically, Pacific decadal oscillation, long decades of cold, and then long decades of warm. It's a puzzle, it's a challenge. You've got all these underlying long-term cycles going on with these point source of stress and change. Who's going to be the winners? Who are going to be the losers? Well, with the warming, it looks like maybe, murres might be losers in that. We'll see. And Caitlin, maybe killer whales are going to be fine. And salmon, we'll see. So, after all that, looking for words of wisdom. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted, which, constantly remind myself of that, because, the birders love to count these, and I'm always like, how do you do that? How do you make an estimate of that?
Where was that taken?
This was actually, I think, a couple years ago by Falls Pass, I believe,
Yeah, sure.
farther west. Yeah, Shearwaters. Yeah.
You can count the wings and you divide by two.
Yeah.
Well, there's 109 of them going to different cities, so.
And I also just wanted to touch on, before I close out here, we do have a lingering oil project that's been ongoing with the Nearshore group. And just, if you weren't aware, the sea otters and sea ducks specifically harlequin ducks, we've been monitoring for very long and looking at how they're recovering from the oil spill. And USGS has just recently said they've recovered. The trend line for the otters are back to recovery numbers. The harlequin ducks are no longer showing exposure in their bloodwork to oil. So we just have the one thing left, which is a monitoring of the lingering oil itself. We just did a survey this last summer. We had done some other surveys in 2001. So we went back to known persistent patches. Just 9 of them did over 400 hits. 6 of those 9 beaches had oil on them. But the oil state and the chemistry of this oil is still not weathering, which tells us it's probably going to persist for longer in those few places that it's left. It's just not changing much. So it's part of the program. Once every 5 years, we'll probably go monitor those sites and check them out, see how they're doing. And then this one, the Nearshore group also, which I've been involved in, is sea star wasting disease. Have you guys heard of that? And it has been in the environment. We've known about it, for decades. It's nothing new. But what's new is that, especially down south, it's exploded into epidemic levels. And so, highly contagious. If this is a healthy sea star, this is one that's diseased. It literally is wasting. And it happens very quickly, within a couple days. It's very contagious to other sea stars. And so you can come across the beach and you'll see hundreds of dead sea stars. And it within 3 or 4 days, it can be a mass die-off. And so they're very concerned down south. They're wondering, why is it becoming this epidemic level? Is it climate change? Is it warming conditions? That's kind of their going theory. We've been monitoring for it. We didn't see it in 2014. But however, last summer, we did see it on Perry Island. And Dave, you saw it in Green Island?
Green Island.
On Green. We did see it in Humpback Bay. Also, I would say 2 years ago, we started seeing it in Juneau a lot in southeast and in southern southeast. It is reaching, a bay scale where it's really obvious that these sea stars are getting infected pretty fast. So, last two summers have been really warm, and now we're starting to see it. So maybe that is a trigger for the outbreak. But we're concerned because this is a keystone predator in the intertidal. Darnell sea stars, they really feed heavily on clams, barnacles, and mussels. Mussels, in particular, and clams are big forage items for seabirds and sea otters. So if these guys go away, we might see a resurgence of some of the bivalves, which...
Is there any danger to the other species, any crossover?
In this group, these are echinoderms, anything with 2 feet. They have seen sea cucumbers get it, and sea urchins. Just had someone report to me in southeast that they saw a big guy on the sea urchins, so I haven't looked into that yet. But we're trying to just get reports and document them. It's a big coastline. Not everybody can be out there looking all the time. So take a picture, send it in, get a waypoint, or if your camera does geotagging, send it in to us. We'll put it in the database, try and start getting a grasp of, do we have a large-scale epidemic across the northern Pacific, or is it just in certain areas? So,
Has it ever been seen anywhere else in the world?
I believe so. Back in the 70s, I remember some outbreaks that happened out in California. It's common in aquariums, actually, which is a stressful environment. And so you can get it there, but it just kills your sea stars. It doesn't kill everything, so people just get rid of it. I think some of the issue maybe is when they get it in their aquariums, that people throw the contents of their aquariums onto the beach, and it somehow is contagious then to other sea stars, and then it starts spreading all over. So instead of treating it like a biohazard, and not reintroducing it into the environment would be a good place to start with that, but something's changed. And so, this is really, if it is an outbreak, something changed. And so,
It's kind of like the cat litter boxes with the southern sea otters.
yeah.
I mean, people are dumb.
Yeah.
Cat litter.
It's not a good diet. Seaweed. Now there's something that's better. Get your veggies. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to kind of point out those monitoring issues that aren't part of the pelagic group, but of note recently. And we do have a lot of outreach stuff online. Google it. There's Gulf Watch Alaska on the AU site. The Sea Life Center has put out some virtual field trips that interview some of the researchers and what they're doing. They're kind of neat videos. They're trying to go up there and find something new. I didn't know it was there, but there's also a YouTube channel, and so a lot of education and outreach stuff too. So if you have extra time, Google it, you get even more information. And the data is actually housed on AUS's site. If you actually want to download, some of the data, you can take a look at it. So, that was a lot. Thanks for hanging in there with me. You already asked a lot of questions, but any more? Yeah.
Okay, so the Shorezone provides you a snapshot, and as you said, it's taken 15 years and you haven't completed the state. You have a long-term monitoring program that's providing you time but not space. How do you combine the two?
Well, so getting that baseline of continuous shoreline is really valuable because when you map it, you can identify areas of interest or like the known spawning habitats. One thing we did with the sound, which was kind of a fun exercise, was, okay, it's getting a little nerdy, but we did some, I called it forensic profiling of the coastline, where we took all the known, we took Fish and Game's historic data set, all the known beaches in the sound that had spawn on them, and we put them into the Shorezone database, and we pulled up all the profiles associated with that. So what kind of beach slope, substrate, biota, all of those things were associated with spawning, known spawning areas, persistent spawning areas over time. And then took those profiles and put them back into the database and said, show me all the shoreline in Prince William Sound that has this profile. And it generated a map instantly. So if you were a resource manager and there was an incident, you could take that map and go, well, these are all the important habitats that we should protect if we want to help maintain habitat for herring. And it was an alarming number. It was a lot. But you could pare it down and say, well, I just want the top 10 type habitats that are the most important and profile those. But you could do it in stages. But you could, do these habitat capability models with it. But you can also go back and do Shorezone again very cost effectively just in one portion of the shoreline for one day to get more of a temporal thing. And then, look at, has it changed over time? And we recommend maybe once every 10 years. Cook Inlet's been done twice. It was once in 9 years. All of Cook Inlet was imaged in the early 2000s and then later in 2009. So different partners who had different areas of interest. Prince William, or Puget Sound in Washington, they do the aerials every year, and they have that for like at least 15 years, I think. They have all that imagery and everything, and you can see all the development projects in Tacoma. They actually recommended the big pulp mill down there, and got all the fill out of there, re-putting fresh stuff, put in a park. You can see that all in their imagery over time. It's kind of cool. Not that we have that kind of development here, but so there are lots of ways of using it as a tool, and actually once you get all of that baseline, you can go back and mine it, or go back just to do a certain section of interest. So yeah, go ahead.
I see you kind of perked up when we were talking about eelgrass.
Yeah.
But why eelgrass? Why not,
Well,
why not the pot kelp?
yeah,
I mean,
it's kind of
What's
overrated.
so critical about eelgrass compared to pot kelp?
It's overrated, but there's actually agency mandates that it's classified as a sensitive habitat. So the minute you say eelgrass, everybody has to say, stop, save this, it's no nursery
So
area.
what person decided this?
From a whole bunch of research down south, and this is where I come back to my statement of Alaska breaks all the rules, because I think eelgrass is a very important habitat, but I don't think it's any more valuable here than a kelp understory habitat. I think fish and invertebrates use both. They're both important. But down south, they've documented, there's way more diversity, way more critical habitat use by important commercial species in eelgrass beds versus other types of habitats. But up here, I would argue it's a little different.
And there was one kelp that we didn't bring up, we called it sieve kelp.
Oh,
And it's,
shotgun kill.
yeah, but when we were diving and raking for eggs, it was the heaviest and had the most concentration
Did it really?
of eggs on it.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
herring like,
the pounds you would get from harvesting that compared to the other kelp,
yeah,
but it's bitter.
yeah.
But there was
It's-
still a market for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
the
that's a
Japanese
garum.
buy it.
It's known as the shotgun kelp, or like you said.
Right, but I mean, in my
and-
mind, I'm thinking for herring,
It's surface area and those holes.
and-
It's great. You can lay a bunch of eggs in that.
right,
Nicely
but that
on
would be
both
one of the
sides.
most important kelps for herring spawn, I would think.
Well, the one they actually do a lot too is, I didn't cover it in here, which is called acid kelp, which is actually, it comes like a horse's tail. It's really wiry and long branches. And it's subtitled, you can pull it up on your anchor all the time. So.
Right.
And it's actually, it releases when it gets stressed. You stress it out, you mess with it. It actually has acid it releases right away. And if you actually look at the tips under a microscope, it has these chains of acidic cells that just burst. They're really delicate and they just burst and they release acid all over. And you think, why would a herring lay their eggs right next to that little bomb shelter? It's like, they do, they love it. They put it on there all the time. And that actually is a good Asian combination because an acid is like having vinegar with your rum. And so for people, they love it, but
So that's not a
Smaller
poisonous
organisms.
species?
huh?
I had read years ago that was a poisonous seaweed species, our only poisonous seaweed species.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to kill you, but it's going to be acidic and it's going to be not as pleasant. And some have more acid than others, depending on the species. The one I was just talking about doesn't have a lot, just enough to give you a little zip. For humans, it's not a toxic level, but if you're a snail, look out. That's, World War III.
And it seemed like when the herring spawn, there's lots of birds that feed on the kelp that
Yeah,
have the eggs on it.
yeah,
I don't know if
yeah.
that's
It,
probably a pretty important part of their diet.
It is huge. Those are huge critical nutrients at the end of the winter. They're at their leanest point. If they don't get that row, it's going to be tough to make it to spring. But over, on Montague, I've seen some of the largest versions of intertidal fish and invertebrates and crabs I've ever seen anywhere. They're monstrous because they're gorged on roe. I mean, things are 3 times bigger than they should be. When there is good roe there, holy cow, it's pretty impressive, but it makes all the difference. And that is that Alaskan size thing you would expect. But it's tough, and they're not there. They miss it. They miss the window. Timing, it's a big issue. But climate change is coming. Maybe it won't be. Maybe things will even out. Won't be as stressful. Get good whatever you want. Just different.
So eating the kelp, there isn't too much else to worry about. I'm sure younger kelp is a
Yeah.
little better because there's as much other things growing on it. And
Yeah,
do they, I remember near some of the old mine sites that they could potentially accumulate
but yeah, I
metals?
wouldn't recommend
But is
that.
it-
Heavy metals.
So someplace
They're
where there's a
actually
chance
used-
of,
In Asia, they're actually used as a remediation substrate to absorb heavy metals from industrials, which is pretty darn cool. I mean,
yeah.
you're not using some synthetic
Just don't eat
product
them
or
out of
something
those
toxic.
bays.
But, yeah, so, but, yeah, be conscious of your environment. Don't be by harbors or someone's sewage outfall or a known mine tailings area. And go in the spring when they're fresh before everyone else has discovered them and is grazing and using them as substrate to grow and getting all fouled up with other things, because those are extra calories you probably don't need or want. It's not as pleasant to eat, but get the fresh young ones. You know, if it looks good, it is good, right? Who's that, Andrew Zimmerman and his food show?
Yeah.
He goes all over the world and eats creepy crawlings. Don't eat fucus stuff, please. Let's start there. That's a no-no.
It's got eggs on it, it's pretty tasty.
Yeah, pop the eggs off of it though.
Oh.
I mean, if you put it in a bucket and stress it out, it creates like a gallon of mucus in no time. It secretes this. If it can cure cancer, I'll be a millionaire, a billionaire. That's the only thing. If we can find out what fucus mucus actually is good for, we'll make it rich. So,
Dolly Garza brought her book here and had a book signed
Uh-huh.
at Orca Book and years ago. It was all on edible.
yes, she did, yeah.
Funded by.
That's another
Well, she
book.
worked for Seagram.
Yeah, yeah, I know her, and I didn't want to go there. Just let's ID them right, and then use her recipes.
Right. Yeah, she got some good recipes.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go see
definitely.
her next 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I just wanted to help people identify the right thing, get the good stuff, because it can be a challenge depending on the time of year, how ratty the specimen is, but hopefully it'll help get you there a little closer and know what you're grabbing. And same thing with the fish. I have a few of these. I have 4. Anybody want one? You guys already answered all my quiz questions because spoiler alert.
I'll do one.
Okay. Dave gets one because he needs it on his boat.
He needs it on his boat.
Yeah.
One of the other ones on his boat.
Field versions.
Well, yeah. And if you're really desperate, want more, email me and I'll mail you one. They're free. There you go. And then this is the fish one. And it's on water resistant, so it's not proof, so don't throw it in the water. But if it's rained, it'll be fine. So this was, if you want to look through these while they're here, these are the art exhibit with the interpretation and some of the photos in there. If anybody wants to flip through. This is the Gulf of Alaska. This is part of it. Just see the art if I can. Exactly. That's pretty much the message. Yeah, you can pass them around. Yeah. Permafrost is going away.
Gil met him on a shore in the Gulf.
Yep. The giant hill.
I was told that it didn't come any farther north than Sydney.
It's a little cabin.
Yeah, well, so, yes, and it's changed in the last 20 years. And they transferred it to Hitchcock for scientific research.
Because
They get
they needed it.
They permitted it, yeah, so they did transplant to get started. And then when we did Shorezone, we actually discovered on the bog map, there's a huge population of it.
But it's a
Didn't know
little
that.
small offer.
No, it's huge. I mean, 100% on the coast, huge acres of it. And it's
One of those in the
as far as we can
integrated
tell, it's been there for about
silence.
20 years. We've interviewed fishermen trying to figure out, but, you know, as you go to Kodiak, you're also getting farther south again.
Right.
So that maybe it was introduced by a vessel, you know,
Yes, I just caught it.
artificially introduced to people because it was far enough south and so west.
Yeah, we'd haul ours as Craig.
Yeah, yeah, the pounds, yeah, that's the,
Out in the Sea Otter Sound is where they really get.
Sorry, I missed this one.
there's so much of it there. Yeah.
We tried to recover what the globe was.
Oh, really?
Wasn't that good quality.
Yeah,
They kept pumps on it.
Oh, so you mean the,
But anytime you get a piece of fresh water on it,
okay, the.
Yeah.
it's a hole right in it.
yeah, that'll make a turn either way. It's definitely a open ocean, saltwater loving marine species. It doesn't like any fresh
Always have to
water.
have something good.
So Copper River Delta
10
is
days max.
not an option. It's not gonna grow there.
Yeah, well, I think that it could be coming from St. Elias too, if it isn't coming from down farther south. There could be some out there.
Yeah. It's for that particular one, the salinities are a game changer for it to reproduce. It needs a certain salinity in order to carry on its alternate life stage, so.
Which one was that?
The giant kelp, the
Oh, yeah.
Mammoth.
That one, I sent you pictures of that
Yeah.
one I saw. I've usually seen little pieces here, this was just a full, and it could have been attached now, because it's in that area you were mentioning where you I'd never seen
Yeah.
that full and large of it before, just between Stockdale and Chalmers.
Right.
Warm summers, warm water.
Down in
Warm
southeastern,
saline.
we sent somebody to Sitka at one time.
Oh, yeah.
To look for it.
Yeah.
It was too
You want
small.
one?
Uh-huh.
But
I just
it
want
could
one
have
for
been
the
even
science
here
center,
that
for sure.
farther south was.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, I know, because they're sold
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But
I
it's
said,
coming
I
out.
guess Cape
Well, Peter
Clear,
promises me,
down that area, it's probably attached for kayak.
we're coming to our center for a while.
You found a piece floating in Cordova Harbor. I mean, just a loose little.
I guess something like that.
Yeah, it could have been brought along too. Take pictures of it, show it to people, then throw it over. I've done that.
I think the library has it. I think the library has it.
Yeah. Anybody else see
I have a couple.
the Mola Mola? Anybody see any other anomalous things? I'm curious.
Shearwaters.
Shearwaters?
Oh my gosh, hundreds and hundreds.
Hundreds?
Just staying for a month, 2 months around Green Island. I mean, it was just,
Crazy.
that was really, really strange. Scott, you saw the mole area.
Yeah, our crew down in Southeast got.
Then one washed up on shore here at Orca.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, weird stuff's going on.
But then we had did you have the big smacks of jellies in Southeast, the moon jellies?
Yeah, we had some, but I heard it was big.
Yeah.
Actually, in the Gulf, they were shocked. They ran across these huge, out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Huge
Yeah.
balls of them, and they had never seen that before
Yeah.
either. So,
I've kind of seen this before. You know,
yeah, it's sick.
25 years ago, and some friend of mine said in the late 60s, early 70s, in Valdez Arm again, a big,
Yeah, it's sick. It might have to do with the decadal
Yeah,
oscillation.
yeah.
Sure feels like it, but
I've seen some from the jet.
another decade.
a month ago.
Confirm.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Oh, they're just unbelievable this summer. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, gee.
Yeah,
A great
everybody
little
was
video
coming
on
back.
Facebook on Aqua Charter Services.
Oh, really?
It's a nice
Okay.
video of them. And,
Nice.
yeah. And like Aqua Charter Services while you're there.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting that blurb in.
Yeah, I got it.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody. I know we're in big competition with the ferry meeting, so.
Yeah, well, thank you so much